For anyone waiting, we'll be starting here in about 5 minutes. We're just getting everybody into the chat.
Okay, don't see anything yet, so
Okay,
I'm probably just going to go over
check your
Gmail. Gmail then. Hang on a second. Okay. To do that, I've got to go to Play Store. I don't know why. We hate the technologies. Okay.
You know, you think after 4 episodes we'd have this down.
Yeah.
You know, the pregame show is always so funny.
It is, actually, because you're watching, what, 2 old vampires work with technology, right? That's just... Okay, click here. And you should be seeing me in a second.
Alrighty. There you are. I'm going to hang up.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Eva. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can.
Great. So just 3 minutes to go, and then we will begin.
And Stephen should be coming in. He got the email. Holly just texted me. Oh, no, that was Heather.
How's everything sounding here? Mike, okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, good. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. I know you might want to ping Stephen and just make sure that he...
Oh, wait, okay. Stephen says, I haven't seen the email yet, and I just messaged Eva, but seeing if I should enter the live room and call in via the app. And when should I do that? I'll just say, yep, do it now. Okay. Okay, do it now.
Because it was sent. It was sent to the Star Chamber Show.
Oh, okay.
Tell him it was sent to the Star Chamber Show.
Okay, so now you'll be able to find him in the live room and call in via the app. Okay. This is how you say live room that we have on the Podbeans. What?
Oh, God. Every time we turn around, we're learning something new.
Yeah.
Ah, there he is.
Cool. All right.
I'm in the room. Now, how do I... Stephen, are you there? Can we hear you? Can't hear him. It says he's joined the room. How do I get him?
So I have to scroll down a bit, or there's a drop-down menu, maybe? As I recall?
No. Okay.
So did you send it to his, the initial...
the 7, number 7. Number
okay,
7
hang on.
email. Tell him it's to number 7 at Gmail. That's the email that I had.
Okay. Okay, I'm getting... Oh, he would prefer it if you'd send to 7starpress at Yahoo.
Oh, okay, I can do that.
Yeah. By the way, he says, he can hear us.
Yeah, I know he can hear me. He just can't get... Okay, so 7-star press. Seventh star press. Oh, there he is. Invite. Okay, 7th star press.
And for those who've just joined us, we're about to go on. We're just getting our guest online.
Invite. Okay, I think I did it. Tell him to check it.
Yep.
There he is.
I think, yep, okay, good.
Are you there, Stephen?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, well, we're going to get going. Are you ready, Dan?
I am ready.
All right, it is 7 o'clock. Welcome to Vamp Chat with Dan and Eva, a podcast devoted to vampire fiction, Fanged folklore, and the Gothic imagination. I'm Eva Vertrice, author of the Fury trilogy. Book 1, A Fury, is currently out, with Book 2, A Hellish Fury, coming in 2025.
And I'm Dan Klefstad, author of Fiona's Guardians and its forthcoming sequel.
So, Dan, our interview with Louisville Public Media, aired last Friday on WFPL and is posted at lpm.org. So thank you, Bria Jones, for such a great conversation. You can read her excerpt of the interview and listen to a little audio snippet using the little audio button near the top of the post. I think the only thing missing was how much we laughed during it. It was so much fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It is too bad that all that laughter had to be deleted in post to keep it, within the standard radio time. But you can find the interview on our Vamp Chat with Dan and Eva Facebook page. And the media love continues for Vamp Chat. Eva and I will go live on Crossroads Radio on October 23rd at 9 a.m. Eastern. We will talk about 9 a.m. Eastern. We will talk about Vamp Chat as well as our upcoming appearance in LaGrange, Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to both of these. We will be at From the Ground Up Books on Saturday, October 26th from noon to 4, where we will both be signing copies of our novels.
So, Eva, I have to ask, are we bringing any Vamp Chat swag to this event?
I'm not sure. I guess people will just have to come out and see.
Ooh, a little teaser. Okay. So come see us at From the Ground Up Books on Saturday, October 26th, noon to 4. Okay. Eva, one of the features that makes Vamp Chat extra compelling is our inclusion of Fanged Folklore. And tonight it's your turn to lead this segment. Give us a little teaser about what you'll have for us.
All I'm going to say is sticks and stones may break your bones, but bricks will stop a vampire.
I am intrigued.
And I will keep intriguing you with more chilling tales after we interview our very special guest who is joining us now. So, Dan, would you like to do the honors?
Absolutely. Tonight, we are thrilled to welcome Stephen Zimmer, a man who wears many hats, but is also the author of a vampire novel called Prowling the Darkness, one of his Rayden Valkyrie Tales. Stephen Zimmer, welcome to Vamp Chat.
Great to be here, Dan and Eva. This is fantastic. I love your show, and to be a guest is definitely an honor, and really looking forward to our chat tonight. And I do qualify, yes, as you pointed out.
That's right.
Stephen, I'm so glad to have you on our podcast. I mean, not only are you a very dear friend, but you're also a great author. And I have to say, I really enjoyed reading Prowling the Darkness.
Excellent.
My first question is around the protagonist of this story. So she's a different kind of vampire hunter, isn't she? I mean, in fact, this is an offshoot of your Rayden Valkyrie series, and it could be said that she really isn't even a vampire hunter by trade at all. She's a highly skilled warrior, gun for hire. She's commissioned to go to a city and take care of an issue. So what inspired you to take a character who isn't a vampire hunter and add the vampire element to the series?
Well, she definitely tackles anything that she thinks needs to be confronted, and it's set, like as you might have found out, it's set in an ancient world kind of setting. Think of ancient Greece, ancient Rome, that type of time period, era of city-states, things like that. And in the book, Blood of a Queen, she encounters what she thinks at first is a sorceress who turns out to be a lot more than that. And she discovers that she is one of the Sharir Mord, which is the name of this particular race. And so once she finds that, that leads her to this other city, Sareth Naga is the name of the city. And there she comes across a very interesting setting where this race of vampire beings are ruling over entire city, and they are actually under siege by a very adversarial enemy race that is of another type. But we'll get into that probably a little bit later.
We
will.
But yes, it sets the ground, and she does. She's trying to kind of pursue down what she's found in that previous novella, they are standalones. But if people read them, they will find there are connections between them. And in this particular case, yeah, there is a connection between those two novellas. But this is the one where you really get into the Sharir Mord, and so I thought that would be the fun one to really represent, myself in relation to vampires in the world of vampires, and that's what Rayden does. She chases after the baddies.
All right. Well, let's dive a little deeper into the Sharir Mord. So rather than being the charming aristocratic sort of vampire like Dracula or Lestat, your vampires are more like true monsters. Tell us a little bit more about the Sharir Mord, and where did you get the idea for them?
I thought it would be fun in this world to have them as a race of beings. They are immortal. They can actually reproduce, and that's not brought out much more until I actually finished a recent duology of Rayden Valkyrie novels. It's called The Crossing, and the first book is Beyond the Gates. Second book is going to be titled The Light Within, and you do get to see a little bit more about the how long it takes for the process of having new Sharir Mord. But some of those things come later. But they are a race of beings, and so it's not a case where a human being can be bit by one and transformed into one, but they most certainly are vampiric creatures, and they do thrive on blood. They thrive on blood magic. They're very steeped into this world's version of the occult. This particular community has always worshipped a really dark a serpent god named Menorabus, and so yes, it's a very ancient race, and all the ones that you see have lived for a very long time, and as I said, they reproduce very slowly and not frequently. So it's a case where they're definitely having to protect their numbers, so to speak, when they have adversaries of the kind that there are in this novella.
All right.
Well, there's another thing that clearly marks the Sharir Mord as villains, and that's we were trying to figure out how to best put this, but it's the tribute they levy on the surrounding inhabitants. So can you talk more about the sacrifices and the ultimate purpose of these?
Yes, well, as mentioned earlier, they do blood magic, and one of those things is blood sacrifice, and so they actually levy sacrifice in the form of children. And that's where children are being given over to them to be taken into their. They have like a labyrinth underneath the city that has the Chamber of the Moon is one of their major sacrificial areas, and that comes up in the book, and it coincides with the actual blood moon. And so that's what Rayden happens to be in the city. So he amps it all up a bit. But they are they're definitely wanting to fuel that blood magic. And so yes, they and like I said, this leads to some Rayden gives her some more insight and more clues to something even bigger after this novella. But yes, that's what they're doing. They are very the Mysteries of Endless Night is kind of like their path. And they're almost like sorceress vampires, and so yes, they're always rooting into the depths of arcane types of dark magic, and yes, and unfortunately they need human blood sacrifice to really fuel it most potently, and so that's what really ticks Rayden off. That's what gets her.
Because that's off a lot in this movie, in this book, in this movie.
When innocents are like that, when she does have an honor code. She's not, like I said, she's rough, and she's not afraid to bury that axe in somebody's head. She's not afraid to punch somebody in a tavern that tries to grope her or things like that. I mean, she is tough as nails. So she's not a squeaky clean hero, but she does have a really precise honor code, and one of those things is innocence. And when innocents are being harmed, that's one of those things that really gets her going, and that's definitely the case in this story.
Yeah. So you have established the Sharir Mord as an apex predator, the villains of the story. But there is one creature that is more powerful. than the Sharir Mord, and that is a group of shapeshifters we meet at the beginning of the book as Rayden approaches the city. Describe the Serdivans. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Serdivans?
Yes, Serdivans. Yes, you can pronounce it. That's exactly it.
And without spoiling too much, tell us why they've surrounded the city.
They finally got their ancient enemy cornered, more or less, in this story, and they've had it's gone back literally millennia. This rivalry between the two, and in a physical sense, they do more or less have the upper hand. It doesn't mean that Serdivans don't die in battles with the Sharir Mord, but they do have a little bit of an edge when they do their thing, and they are imagine them as really robust. I mean, I'm talking robust, muscular, almost like a jaguar leopard type build, but coats of solid black when they're in that form. And like you said, shapeshifter. And they actually when they're getting into almost like a fighting mode, they take on a few more attributes, and they actually manifest a crest down their back. That's when you know that they're basically in full berserker mode almost. and so they actually have a couple stages of shape shifting, and I had a little fun with that. But yes, they are all around that city, and there is a reason why they can't enter it at first, and that's part of the mystery of the story and what Rayden discovers and what she helps address, and that finally allows things to take their course. But without giving too many spoilers away, but yes, they are held out of the walls due to some things that the Sharir Mord have put in place, empowered by their sorcery and so forth.
I have a follow-up, Stephen. I understand from Eva that you have a special name for the Serdivans.
A special? Oh, the big kitties. Yes, the big kitties.
Yeah, something you don't mention in the book, but it's just something when you're talking about them, with friends, that's like, that's kind of nice. Here, kitty,
they are that, and very big kitties, but they are. I got a lot of inspiration. The funny thing is, I got a lot of inspiration from a movie you may like, and it's not about vampires per se, but it's the second Cat People movie. The one with Natasha Kinski, and the one with the amazing David Bowie song "Cat People."
Yeah.
And there's a dream sequence in that movie that always, as a kid, I saw it, and it always stuck in my mind, and I just loved it. I was mesmerized by that, where they go into this kind of astral world, and they see all the, in a sense, they're almost like gods. They are, and they're all the Black Panthers are all up in this tree together, and they are, in an afterworld kind of setting. And I was always mesmerized by that image, and so that there's a little bit of inspiration from that. In the Serdivans and my approach to them, and if you look for it in the novel, there is an homage. There's a little tip of the cap to that Cat People scene. That's actually in the novella.
Yes, there is. I remember now. Okay. Yeah.
There is an homage, and definitely is I love that imagery, and this is a very different type of being than what's in that movie, but it's definitely a tip of the cap to it for a little inspiration as a kid.
So, Stephen, in the story, one night Rayden escapes the city, and she's being pursued by one of the Sharir Mord. And just as it's about to catch up to her and kill her, the Serdivans appear and kill it. I mean, actually, they rip it to shreds. So, can you tell us what happens as a result of this, but without giving too much away?
Well, that's her meeting with them, and the Sharir Mord and its bloodlust has foolishly gone beyond the barrier that is in place that protects them, and so it's at their mercy at that point. And so when she runs out and one-on-one, it's that moment, she knew that she was definitely, definitely facing something more than she can handle, and so as you said, the Serdivans deal with her, and then they do reveal, what they are, and they do to make her feel more comfortable. However, they do shift into a human-like appearance, though there are still some hints, even in their human shape, that they are something else. But at least for Rayden, it puts her a little more at ease.
Uh-huh.
when she meets them.
Yeah, up to this point, she knew of them, but she didn't know how to reach them.
Right. Yeah, and this is the meeting, the connection, and this gets her a little bit more into their world, and gets to her as I would say, a relationship going with a couple of them that continues beyond this book.
All right. Can't wait to read the next one then.
Yeah.
Stephen, almost from the beginning, we have a sense that Rayden has arrived at Sereth Naga for a reason other than she's looking for work. Now, the answer can be found in an earlier book in this series, and I think at the beginning of the show you mentioned Blood of a Queen. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the event that prompted Rayden to go to Sereth Naga.
Well, she has, as I said, she was in another city-state, and that's where she encountered one of the Sharir Mord. Her name was Urian Na, was the name of the character, and at first she thinks she's just a sorceress, helping the queen in that city, and then, toward the end of that story, she finds out she's something much more than that, and it's a pretty spectacular scene with how Rayden resolves that particular one. But she also has been given some guidance by a old priest that she meets there, who serves Ahurin Maz, who is a little bit Zoroastrian in influence, that particular god, but set in this world, of course. But that priest definitely gives her some guidance into some things, and that sets her in motion and gives her the kind of impetus that she wants to follow the trail of this to the lair, so to speak, and find out what's going on in Sereth Naga, and ultimately, find out, where these creatures are coming from.
So is she hired to do this, or is this just something that, because I kind of got the impression that she was maybe hired, or there was some kind of underlying, or was it because she just, needed to know, or needed to rid them of the world of these creatures?
Yeah, it's her own personal mission, but she, as you see, she does, she will take on occasional, like, pose as a mercenary or pose as an assassin in some cases, in order to get in under. It's almost like her cover for some of the things that she does. Think of it almost like a little bit of a detective work, and that's her cover sometimes, as being using her martial prowess to serve as a warrior, or as an assassin, or as something of that kind of nature, in order to get inside, so, like I said, behind the scenes a little bit, and so she can find out what she needs to find out. Nice. So sometimes she takes on those kind of roles.
Nice. Well, the one thing that isn't mentioned is how the Sharir Mord and the Servants began, their origins. So do you discuss that in any other books in the series, or, if not, perhaps it's a good suggestion for another book, because I'm curious.
Oh, that's coming. That is coming, right, and I'm glad you asked that question. I can't give that away, because that is part of a story that's yet to come. Nice. A little more of that gets revealed in the two novels I just told you about, that are forthcoming, and so you get a little more insight into that. But I do plan on fully telling the story of how the ancient enmity, began.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So cool. That's coming.
So it's like a Stephen King style multiverse is what we could get out
yes.
of it.
Yeah. And I do that, and I have my Ragnar Stormbringer and Hongvi Shadowwalker. He's based on ancient Puebloans, think of the Hopi, just for an easy reference. But I do have other characters that are set in this world that I do stories with, and so yes, I will give different angles on some of these ancient lores, but sometimes through other characters. So yeah, it is like that. There is a multiverse going on, and you'll see it through different eyes sometimes.
I can't wait for that. Now, Stephen, even I have mentioned several times during the show that we broke away from the norm and made our characters strong female vampires. In Prowling the Darkness, you write about a female warrior who is not to be trifled with. Why did you decide to break the norm of male warriors and go this route?
She just came to me, and Rayden Valkyrie. I've talked about this a few times in the past, but it occurred after my mother had passed back in 2013, and I only had two of my main series going at the time, and then I was in a fog at the time, and I was really having a hard time creatively, and literally, I mean, Rayden Valkyrie kind of came to me and inspired me, the character idea, to write again, because she has her backstory, which I haven't told her full origin story, but she was orphaned as a child, and she lost both of her parents, and she had to fight a real hard road, and then actually ended up getting adopted by essentially like a Germanic tribe to the south that raised her, and she has had to forge her own path, without her parents around and things like that. And so the whole concept of her just came to me, back in that kind of dark time for myself, and a real independent spirit, the real self-motivated, self-driven kind of character that she is, just really just popped in my head, and I just had a burn to write her story, and that's what led to my first novel of her, Heart of a Lion, and kind of kick-started the whole thing with Rayden. And so yeah, I mean, it's just something that just kind of came to me and pulled me back from a real bad time, and got me back on a good creative trail again. And since then, I've got a trilogy written with her and 6 novellas, and now I've got 2 more novels featuring her. So yeah, it's led to quite a bit with her, and then grown into other characters in that world. So it's been quite a ride. But yeah, it started back in that kind of fog, and then she pulled me out of it. So
it's great muse.
mm-hmm.
Well, as Dan mentioned earlier, you wear many hats. So to name just a few, you run a publishing company, 7 Star Press. You host the Star Chamber show with the lovely Holly Philippi, who I adore. And along with Holly, you organize the Imaginarium convention, which is now in its 12th year. So I guess my next question is, where do you find time to do all this and write books?
Well, it's just I've always said, something I work as an editor, and I always tell writers I work with, don't get caught up in worrying, obsessing about word count so much as writing regularly, and just make sure you're doing something on a regular basis. Sure, sometimes you need days off, sometimes life happens, you can't write, but the important thing is to write on a regular basis, and that's always been my mantra and to myself, and so it doesn't matter whether I write 500 words or 5,000 words. Some days I have, more time than others to work, but I always make sure that I start my day writing. And that's when my head is not filled with clutter from, social media or business or, concerns of personal concern, whatever. It's definitely the time for me to be creative, and I've got my definitely a place that is solely for writing in my home, that over time has given me like a Pavlovian response, and when I sit down at this spot, it's like my creative brain just totally kicks in, and that's how I start my day, and then once I'm done writing, then I move on to all the other stuff, as you say, the many hats. but writing is always the first thing I do, and every day I try to write on a daily basis, just however long I can.
Yeah, and we touched just briefly on the Star Chamber Show podcast, which airs Wednesdays, and you and Holly, your co-host, have invited us to join you on Wednesday, October 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern. This is also on Podbean, and we are Eva and I
after our show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're gonna switch hats. Yeah, like I'm hosting later tonight. But on that particular day, yeah, you'll be changing seats, and we'll get to feature you as a guest. So that'll be a lot of fun.
We've already talked about there's an hour between, so we're gonna have a drink and
just relax,
right?
And then go on. Yeah.
But that's gonna be a blast, and definitely. I've had you both on individually before, but this is gonna be, just exponentially amazing, because we'll have both of you at the same time. So that will
break
be awesome.
The internet.
Break the internet.
Yeah.
And if you would just touch base real quick on what the Imaginarium is.
Imaginarium is this is its 12th year, and it's always been a passion project of mine to combine the atmosphere and relaxed, enjoyable world of a convention with the full meat of a major national creative writing conference. And by creative writing, I'm speaking comprehensively. I don't mean just books, though we cover all genres of fiction, and nonfiction is also covered, of course, as well. But we also, of course, love poetry, screenwriting, writing for game development, and gaming, and all those things, songwriting, lyric writing. So yes, when I mean creative writing, covers everything. Yeah, we do embrace all forms of creative writing, in different media even. So yes, I think it's very unique in that aspect. You don't see a lot of events that often do embrace other types of other spheres of writing, but that's one thing that I was very particular about. And it's 3 days of just great camaraderie, expo. We have a film festival, over 130 workshops and panels, and I mean just great people giving them just great workshops. Dan had standing room only at his last summer, for example. He was awesome, and but it's a great. I think it's I call it a battery recharger, if that makes sense.
That's a good way to describe it.
People always talk about that. They talk about how they come out of it just fired up and ready to write again, be creative again, make films, write books, get published. We get tons of feedback that's all in that vein after each year, and I hope people give it a chance and try it out. It's not the kind of event where it's all about the celebrity. This is about the indie creative path and indie community as a writing community. So it's something a little different. But yeah, we've grown every year, and I think we've got a great venue, and here we are. Our 12th year, so let's keep fingers crossed and hope we can keep on track here.
Well,
I always will.
It really is a family. It really is. And actually Vamp Chat's going to have a booth there, and we're going to be doing a podcast live from there. So I'm excited to be joining it again.
Oh yeah, I am too. So.
Yeah,
because I can finally track Dan down. That's the thing. Now that he has a booth, I actually can figure out where he is. Because unfortunately, the way things work, I'm getting pulled in 20 directions, being an administrator at it. So last year it was hard to find him. And then of course, Holly. Yeah, I actually got to meet him and get a picture with him, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me! You got to be kidding me!" I couldn't even. I did see him. I did slip into his workshop, and I got some photos there and things like that. I got to see a chunk of his workshop, so I did get to see him. But yeah, I didn't get to get my picture with him. So yeah, now I can. Now he's got a booth. So
I'm looking forward to it. So.
Well, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Stephen Zimmer, author of Prowling the Darkness. Stephen, stay with us a while we tease our final segment of the show, the one we devote to movie and TV reviews. And Dan, I understand you have a TV miniseries to recommend, an adaptation of a novel by the world's most famous horror author.
Yes. So we've been hearing a lot about the new movie version of Salem's Lot by Stephen King. And I understand fans have been waiting for, I think, 2 years for the producers of this to find a venue to release it on. And they finally have. But I will review the TV miniseries that aired in 1979, something that traumatized an entire generation of kids, including yours truly.
Oh, and I'm right there with you. So we're keeping it real for Generation X, a demographic that also includes tonight's guest. So, Mr. Zimmer, let's get back to you. During Vamp Chat, we ask each of our guests the same set of questions. So, Dan, you want to go first?
All right. Stephen, who is your favorite vampire of all time and why?
That is a tough question, but because there are several that I love. But my favorite, better question would be as far as like how I answer this one. So my favorite vampires are actually in a series by Brian Lumley, the Necroscope series. And they come from actually another planet. It's a real wonderful story that involves kind of like gates and portals that are developed scientifically that that at the time of the Soviet Union that actually pierce through and are able to open this gate to this world where there are these amazingly terrifying vampires that come from that do know how to that do have some shape shifting abilities, and they're phenomenal. And so my favorite vampires are from that particular series. The one that I have the most affinity for is you might chuckle, but it's the vampire from Fright Night, the original Fright Night movie.
Oh, totally.
Chris Sarandon played him. Yes, and I, growing up, I just loved his portrayal. I mean, he had the charm. And there was like some humor in that movie, but there also a very horrific side that would come out in that movie. It really walked the line of comedy horror so well. It had so much of both, and that's what I loved about that movie. And so my favorite vampire of all time would probably be there. My favorite with him, that character, and then my favorite vampires plural would be from the Brian Lumley series.
And for the record, Chris Sarandon's vampire was Jerry Dandridge.
Jerry Dandridge, yes.
Yeah, when Brea Jones interviewed us, she said, at what point did vampires become iconically hot? And, Dan had a very, 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 very eloquent response. And I was like, yeah, no. Fright Night 1. He's standing at the top of the stairs with the apple. I was done. That was it.
Oh, yeah.
It was a great scene. A great movie. Really. A great, great movie. So.
All right. So what vampire power do you wish you had?
The vampire power that I wish I had was just simply the regenerative, the ability to regenerate, from wounds and things like that, because I'm always getting some little nick on injury, which, recently Ava saw me limping a little bit because I twisted my ankle, but I would just love that regenerative ability just to self-repair and feel, spry, at all times after recovering.
All right. Yeah, no, we can all feel that, especially as we get a little bit older,
Yeah.
All right. Are you Team Louis or Team Lestat?
Team Louis, probably.
God, I'm not going to tell Holly, although I think she just.
No, I've told her, and we've gotten into extensive discussions about that. Just the reason is because I think he's just a little more connected to humanity, and I love that aspect about him. And Lestat to me is just too, and I don't mean this to be offensive or anything, but he's just too arrogant, and it just rubs me a little off sometimes, as opposed to where Louis, does have some introspection. I think as a character, and really does, hasn't been disconnected from a lot of the human aspects, and so I do kind of I do have a little sympathy for him too, and I guess Team Louis.
It's really funny. Dan and I keep score, and he's Louis and I'm Lestat, and so far he's 3, I'm 0, and we've tied for 1 because he literally just changed the number on our tally. While you were saying that, he changed the number on our tally. I was like, oh my gosh.
Going for the win,
Yeah. Well, Holly definitely is Team Lestat, hands down. So yeah, get one there.
All right.
But I will say she does understand my view, and she does also have an affinity for Louis. She does.
Understand.
She gets it.
I do understand.
She gets it.
Yes, I get it. But I'm still Team Lestat all the way. Go Holly! I see her in the chat. So the next question is: would you want to be turned into a vampire, and if so, why?
That's a tough one because I've always leaned more toward the lycanthropic. I love shapeshifters and the dream would probably be to be a were-lion, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I won't say much, but there could be something along those lines in one of my books I mentioned just recently. but it would be. It depends on the rules a little bit. I wouldn't like to lose the ability to go around in daylight, and I wouldn't necessarily like to lose my soul. So those are a couple of little questions that, if I retained a soul and I could move in daylight, then I would be more attracted to it, and I would be kind of like my path would be like and I really enjoyed it. Holly introduced me to the series Being Human, and that particular vampire character was pulling away from the visceral, and he was learning how to survive in other ways. Like using like blood bags and things like that. And I think that you can even take that to a step. You can even become a little bit of a vigilante and take out some of the trash in society and satisfy your need for blood that way, by being a vampire. So, yeah, because there's a lot of evil in the world. So I think that I would have to kind of chart a course along those lines, like a little bit of being human and a little bit of taking out the trash of humanity kind of side if I was one. But yes, I wouldn't want to necessarily do that at the cost of soul.
So we'll put you down as vamp curious.
Yeah.
Now, Stephen, before we bid you adieu, give us a thumbnail about your brand new book. Just came out this week, I think, called Embrace of the Sun, and tell us where listeners can get copies of your novels.
Well, thank you for asking about that, because that is brand new, and it was bumped up in the release schedule just in time for a number of appearances I have coming up. I will be also appearing at From the Ground Up Books, only I'll be at the Shepherdsville location on November 2nd. October 26th, I'll be at Fabled Forest Books in Georgetown, Kentucky on October 26th. So the night, I think that's when you guys are up at From the Ground Up Books. Mm-hmm. And then I will be hosting a Books in Bourbon, which I love doing those, at a Kroger Wine and Spirits in Lexington on November the 9th. And on the 16th, I round out the fourth appearance with the Bullitt County Authors Fair in Shepherdsville, where I think Dan is at.
Yes, I
think you're going to be there with me. Yeah, because I'm doing a panel with Lynn Tincher on indie publishing there, and she's the owner from the Ground Up Books, which will be a lot of fun. And the reason I mentioned those 4 dates is because that's going to be the best place for folks to really get a copy. They are available, of course, in the usual places online, but I really want to encourage people that are in this region to come out and see me and check it out. It's a tale set, interestingly enough, it's not in the world that Rayden is, but it's in my epic fantasy world, which is my Fires in Eden series, and this particular one is in that part of the world that is inspired by the Aztecs, the ancient Aztecs, and it's a very heroic story that involves a veteran aging warrior who thinks that he's done fighting and he's finally getting to live peacefully, and then 3 teenagers from his village decide to kill one of the emperor's representatives, which in that time and place means that, oh man, the whole village, his people, are going to be destroyed if he doesn't find a way to get the emperor to call it off. And
wow.
so he heads to their capital, and then in the hopes of heading off the emperor and using all of the things that all of the renown that he has from his years and years and years of service as a great warrior, to put it on the line to hopefully do try to placate the emperor. And this story is all about that, but it deals with a lot of also deals some themes of dark magic. There are dark gods that appear in it, and there's a lot of action, but it's set in a very Aztec inspired setting, so it's a very different kind of fantasy story that not commonly seen. So but I had a lot of fun with it, and that's the one that's just been released.
Oh, it sounds really cool. I hope you get excellent reviews, and of course, I hope you sell a lot of copies.
I hope so too.
I'll be buying one.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yes, and of course, you using the good advice from DIY Book Promo always helps a little bit too.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, Stephen, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us on Vamp Chat. You and Holly are such dear friends, and feel free to stick around because we've got the rest of the show I think you'll find very interesting as well. And we will speak with you again on the Star Chamber show October 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a real honor, Dan and Eva. It's been wonderful.
Oh,
well, thank you so much, Stephen. All right. Cheers, man. All right. And now we pivot to the Fanged Folklore part of the show. Eva, I understand you have been researching bricks. What do these literal building blocks have to do with vampires?
Well, Dan, in this case, the bricks aren't meant to build anything. They're meant to save lives.
Ooh, go on.
All right, here we go. Diving in. In 2006, so recently, archaeologists discovered the remains of a 16th century woman in a mass grave in Venice, Italy, with a brick wedged between her jaws.
That cannot be very comfortable.
So why is this important? What's the significance? Well, it apparently was wedged there intentionally.
I don't get it. Why would anyone want to do that?
Well, it was done to stop her from eating the dead.
Okay. You have my rapt attention.
All right. So we have to first go back and look at the history of the region. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
In the medieval era, the decomposition process of a dead body was not well understood. Okay. Grave diggers were repeatedly called to reopen mass graves for plague victims. And when they did, they would sometimes find bodies bloated by gas or with their fingernails and hair still growing. And they would sometimes, they were sometimes bloody and bodily fluids oozing from their mouths and noses. Now, obviously, this led them to conclude that the corpses were somehow still alive. I mean,
But having a bad day, but alive.
And of course, they were feasting on the blood of their grave mates. It had to be, it's the logical conclusion.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, the burial shrouds laid over the deceased would sometimes develop holes over the mouth area caused by the activity of bacteria inside the mouth of the dead person. And of course, this sparked the idea that vampires somehow drew their strength from eating these pieces of cloth. I mean, we're thinking totally logically here. And it would leave their teeth displayed and bared, and it just made it look like they had been eating through their shrouds, which is why vampires were sometimes referred to as shroud eaters.
I had heard that, but I never knew why.
Yep.
So, that's it. Okay.
Yep. So from observing and hearing these kind of stories, medieval people who lived through the mass casualty events caused by the European plague outbreaks between the 14th and 17th centuries developed a complex mythology about vampires that has actually lived on in one form or another to the present day.
This is fascinating. I mean, yeah.
So this vampire theory is thought to have been spread by gravediggers who regularly came in contact with gruesome decomposing corpses while reopening mass burials in order to add more bodies. And it created this surge of vampire hysteria as village folk began to seek supernatural scapegoats for the deadly disease that ravaged the continent. And in its original formation, the vampire legend claimed that these demonic creatures would intentionally spread the plague among the living to kill as many of them as possible. And they would then feed off the flesh and blood once they were entombed underground. Now, the vampires wouldn't really die from the plague themselves, but they would pretend to, so they could be buried in the mass graves beside the true victims. And supposedly the vampire would gain great strength from their copious consumption of decaying human remains, which would re-energize them and allow them to rise from the dead to prey on the living once again. It's like,
This is diabolical.
I'm just thinking of all of the energy drinks. So once a vampire had been identified hiding among a group of real plague victims, the only way to stop the cycle of death and destruction was to make sure these inhuman monsters couldn't consume their normal form of nourishment. So to kill the vampire, you had to remove the shroud from its mouth, which was its food. It was kind of like milk of a child, and put something uneatable in there.
Like a brick.
Okay. So let's come back to 2006. All right. So the Archaeological Superintendency of Venice initiated an extensive excavation of medieval burial pits at Nuovo Lazaretto.
Like the new Lazarus.
So it was a medieval site located on the outskirts of Venice, and there was a sanatorium dedicated to the care of plague victims that opened sometime during the 14th century. And this area was especially busy during a severe outbreak of the bubonic plague that decimated the population of Venice in 1576. And in these pits, next to a wide array of bones from individuals who had succumbed to the plague, and they were all buried side by side, was they discovered a woman's skull with a stone brick stuffed into her jaw. And by the way the brick was positioned in the mouth, it made it clear that the insertion was intentional.
I could imagine it could never be accidental, right?
Well, they were thinking maybe it could have fallen in, or, just in the exhumation of the grave. But that's when researchers began to link this discovery with stories from medieval European folklore about vampiric plague carriers. And it's not clear how many medieval Europeans actually believed in vampires, but it was clear that those responsible for burying this lady, she was Italian, they were among those who did.
Yeah. Wow.
So we don't know why they suspected her as a vampire, and without any written records from the time there won't be any way to solve the mystery of, what she did to provoke such an extreme judgment and such an extreme response. In 2010, they analyzed her a little bit further, and it was determined that she was of a lower class European who died at age 61, which is actually an advanced age that appears more common than previously thought. I mean, they thought you lived to be 35 and that was a ripe old age, but they've discovered that people actually lived longer than that. And the researchers also concluded that the brick was indeed intentionally placed in the woman's mouth by gravediggers who noticed that she had eaten her face shroud.
Oh, okay.
So the insertion of the hard stone may therefore have been intended to prevent her from magically spreading the plague and biting other victims. Now, here's where it gets kind of wild. So while it was assumed that this was done after she died, because it would have been easier to jam it in, there were also investigations on whether it was possible for a brick to be lodged in her mouth while she was gruesomely still alive.
Oh, God, that would be painful.
And they wanted to see if it could be wedged without damaging the teeth and even the soft tissue of the mouth. So the researchers found that when observing the body with the shroud, they noticed a depression in the mouth region indicating potential chewing. So the abundance of available material indicated, yes, that it was done prior to her death, or that she was indeed a vampire.
I love that science doesn't know. That is interesting. Well, that was a mouthful, Eva. Another thrilling bit of Fanged folklore. Thank you very much for sharing that. Now, before we get into our TV review, let us tease our not one, but two guests for the October 30th episode of Vamp Chat. We will be speaking with blogger Andy Boylan, who runs a page called, there's some discussion here between Eva and me about how we pronounce this, Taliesin or Taliesin meets the vampires. On this blog, Andy has reviewed scores of books, movies, and other content about the undead, so he is an authority on what makes a good vampire tale.
I can't wait to talk to him. And we will also speak with Professor Michelle E. Moore, who researched William Faulkner's screenplay for a vampire movie that was never produced. Now, Dan, I'm familiar with Faulkner's novels, but I did not know he wrote screenplays.
I had actually forgotten this. He wrote the scripts for the Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall classics, The Big Sleep, and To Have and Have Not. Of course, more important for our purposes, he wrote the screenplay for Dreadful Hollow, a vampire film that director Howard Hawks was supposed to shoot, but never did. And for a long time, I believe the script went missing and people began to doubt it existed. So we will turn over our Fanged folklore segment to Professor Michelle E. Moore, who will have more about this.
So join in for a special All Hallows Eve edition of Vamp Chat starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. Okay, now it's time to reveal the vampire video content we've been consuming. And Dan, I'm sure many folks listening right now were traumatized by this miniseries as a kid, because I know I was.
Oh, yeah, same. And that mass trauma results from horror entering the home. And by horror, I mean something far more terrifying than Bela Lugosi or even Christopher Lee as Dracula. You might remember this, Eva. In the 1970s, TV producers amped up the scary with made-for-TV movies that rivaled some of the films you'd see at the theater. I'm thinking of Don't Be Afraid of the Dark as a really good example. It is also very important to note that at this time, the vast majority of TV viewers had just three choices. ABC, NBC, and CBS. What were the channels in your town?
18, 27, and 36.
Oh, she's got a good memory. I've already completely forgotten mine. ABC was 7. CBS was 2. That's the important thing. Yeah. So if a horror show aired on television, chances were high that a youngster might walk to the room, turn on the TV, expecting a sitcom, and be scared out of their minds.
Or
yeah?
do like I did and stay up past bedtime and then sneak stand in the doorway and peek around the corner while Mom and Dad watched them.
Oh, yeah. Well, either scenario, I'm sure this happened to a lot of people with Salem's Lot. Now, there have been several adaptations of Stephen King's novel, but the first was a two-part series produced by Warner Brothers that aired on CBS in November of 1979. I was 12 and a bit sheltered.
I was 9.
Okay, yeah. Now, so we're pretty close in age here. So we were young. This affected us badly. Back then, speaking just for myself, Eve, an episode of Doctor Who might give me nightmares for weeks. Okay, so especially those Daleks or whatever. So imagine what could happen to my psyche when the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper, took control of my television. And Tobe Hooper was a brilliant choice to direct Salem's Lot. I could say that now after having watched the show dozens of times, including just last week. If you wanted a short synopsis, I'd say much of the series plods along at a leisurely pace, punctuated by scary moments. We meet our hero, Ben Mears. We meet the residents of Salem's Lot. We get some history about the town. Ben falls in love with local gal Susan. Susan invites Ben home for dinner. Jump scare! We meet Richard Straker, who, along with his partner, is preparing to open an antique store. Jump scare! We search for a missing child. Realtor gets caught having an affair. Jump scare! Fingernails are scratching at the window. Why are fingernails scratching at the window? And oh my God! Do not let Ralphie in!
Don't let Ralphie in. I've got goosebumps. I literally have goosebumps coming up on my arms right this moment, thinking about it.
Oh, me too. We get scenes with Danny in the hospital, possible diagnosis of pernicious anemia, which sounds very serious. And oh my God, Danny, what are you doing? Do not let Ralphie in a second
don't
time.
Let him in again.
Nurse finds Danny dead. Danny gets buried. Gravedigger gets hypnotized by Danny's coffin. And what is going on here? What are you doing, Gravedigger? Do not jump into the grave.
Don't go in the hole.
What?
Don't go in the hole.
He's in the hole now. Opening the casket? Do not open the casket.
No.
Oh my God, what have you loosed upon the town? We're all going to die and be turned into vampires. Mom! And that's just the first episode.
I still have goosebumps.
Well, so you can imagine, there's a lot to unpack about what makes this miniseries scary even today. And much of that is how Tobe Hooper set up the shots and how he played, almost toyed with film. Those two iconic scenes where Ralphie visits his older brother Danny. Why are they so creepy? What is it about it? Aside from the nails in the window, that's a good start, really good start.
I'm trying to scrape and I can't find it. There we go.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear that.
I can hear that. That's good. That's good. Yeah. I can't do anything like that. Yeah, but I bite my nails because I watched Salem's Lot as a 12-year-old. I keep biting my nails. So that's good. I like that. So why else is it creepy? Well, because of the way Ralphie flies through the open window. So at the time, ropes would have been used for scenes like this, but Hooper chose to strap Ralphie to a dolly. So he's pushed forward in a way that makes it look like he's gliding into the bedroom. And also for these scenes, Hooper decided to shoot much of them in reverse order. So he played back film, and this looked otherworldly and added to this deeply unsettling feeling that we have throughout the scene. It just seemed wrong, something unnatural about it. You might I know you'll remember this, Eva. The other really, really scary scene is in the second episode when we get the gravedigger, the one who jumped into Danny's grave.
Yeah.
He comes back and visits his town's school teacher.
Oh, yeah.
This scene is probably Jeffrey Lewis's most famous. Jeffrey, in case you don't know, he is the father of Juliette Lewis. He enters the bedroom where he died the night before, and the school teacher hears some noise and goes up to investigate. And there we see Jeffrey Lewis.
Don't ever investigate.
Yeah, don't ever investigate. there we see Jeffrey Lewis sitting in a rocking chair, eyes closed, rocking back and forth. And then he opens his eyes, which glow with this unnatural light. Then he rises from the chair, hisses like a snake, bares his fangs, licks his lips, and says, "Look at me, teacher." And 12-year-old me is just scared for life. There's no hope for me anymore after this. You know, I should note something else about the vampires in Salem's Lot. Their skin is gray and their eyes glow yellow, which makes them look diseased. And this fits in with Stephen King's novel. These creatures are a disease, and they're spreading a plague of vampirism across the town. You might remember some other really remarkable performances in this miniseries. Famed English actor James Mason is very effective as Richard Straker, the human watchdog for the master vampire Barlow. Mm-hmm. Mason is sophisticated. He wears three-piece suits and has a way of speaking, almost a lilt, that makes it especially creepy when he says things like, "Oh, you'll enjoy Mr. Barlow when you meet him. And he'll very much enjoy meeting you." Of course, the star of the show is Ben Mears, played by David Soul. What was your favorite David Soul show? Hutch. Of Starsky and Hutch, right? The police action comedy, drama, whatever, from the 1970s. David Soul is perfectly adequate for this role of the writer who comes back to Salem's Lot to write his next book. And I can see why he was cast for this production. But he can't seem to find the right on-screen chemistry with another important cast member, and that is Bonnie Bedelia, who seems really quite young in this series. Of course, we all know. Was. yeah. But of course, she'd later become famous in the Die Hard films. But Bonnie Bedelia is fine in Salem's Lot, and however, I don't feel the love chemistry between her and her character Susan and Ben Mears, played by David Soul, and we really need that chemistry because. Spoiler alert here. Spoiler alert. If you do not want to find the end of the show, hear the end of the show, disappear for 30 seconds, okay? Because the finale involves Ben Mears burning down the Marston house after killing Barlow and Straker, and Susan is trapped in the house. And he has to leave her behind as the house burns. So not having the chemistry, I don't feel the loss as much. I mean, I feel for her, but I don't feel for the loss from his point of view. Later, we learn that Susan has become a vampire and finds Ben Mears when they are on the run in Guatemala. And Ben has to kill her by driving a stake through her heart. I just believe this whole dynamic would have been much more intense if these characters gelled more, but they just didn't. I'd like to mention another cast member, and that's Lance Kerwin, who plays Mark Petrie, a local kid who's a fan of horror and magic tricks. He's a budding writer, and he helps David Soul kill the vampire Barlow. Lance Kerwin, it was a good choice for this role, and the fact that he looked a little like David Soul, a younger version of him, helps quite a bit because the two develop a de facto father-son relationship when they flee Salem's Lot and are on the run in Guatemala.
I never understood why Guatemala.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, it's getting close to the equator. That might have something to do it.
Maybe.
Where the sun shines equally, 12 hours every day. So maybe that's part of it. However, no really proper review of this film can neglect the main vampire, Barlow, who is very different from the Barlow in the novel, you might remember. In this production, he has no lines and looks more like Nosferatu than the aristocratic European in the novel. And I think the makers of this miniseries made the correct choice. Having Straker as the sophisticated one and Barlow as the monster is just such an easy juxtaposition that makes this miniseries work. I have some final thoughts about the film that involve the soundtrack. Am I going on too long here, Eva?
Go for it.
Okay.
Harry Sukman.
Yeah, Harry Sukman did the soundtrack, and he really nails it. during the scenes where Ralphie visits his brother Danny. We hear a steady plucking of strings. Go ahead and do the nails thing again, Eva, while I do this. We hear a steady plucking of strings, accentuated by by a harp and wind instruments, mainly flute, as Ralph approaches the window. And then we get that full orchestra now, led by violins, which turns macabre as Ralphie enters the open window. However, the one place where the music doesn't work for me is in the opening credits when the full orchestra transitions from creepy gothic to an abrupt and loud sort of melodrama that could be the soundtrack for a detective show or a disaster film. Maybe Starsky and Hutch, I don't know. Now, I hated that opening theme as a kid, and I detest it now. But throughout most of the film, the music is perfect. It's funny. I guess I see now that I've given you a more of an impressionistic review of this miniseries, heavily influenced by the imprint it made on me as a kid. But I think what I said here will resonate with Gen Xers who saw this during its first run in November of '79. So there you have it, Eva. My review of Salem's Lot.
Let me tell you a little bit about what this movie did to us. It was like, so you'd have you'd invite your friends over for a sleepover, and you'd be like watching TV, and all of a sudden you would hear, and it would be some punk in the neighborhood would be scratching at the window, trying to scare the 8 girls down in the basement, and we would all be freaking out. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that just changed everything.
Yeah, you've just given a bunch of teenagers a whole new idea of how to scare their neighbors or whatever. Yeah.
But I love how they took the book and changed the subtle things about it, like the roles, like when you said the Barlow versus you don't have an Igor, you're an Igor, kind of character or a familiar. He's very well dressed. He's very proper. And, then the shots, I mean, they made such great adaptations. And this is for something that came on after Lawrence Welk. I mean,
could you imagine the audience for that show, which I kind of have an idea in my mind of what that demographic might be? How many hospitalizations, emergency room visits were there in November of 1979? Just curious.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. All right. So how many drops of blood will you give the 1979 version of Salem's Lot?
Okay. All right. I will preface this by saying the production values were quite good for the time. There's quality film stock that they're using, good practical effects. But this show takes a lot of time establishing its characters, and there are 1 or 2 scenes that probably could have been left out. This miniseries was, back then, it was 2 90-minute episodes that aired a week apart.
That's a Lord of the Rings movie.
Yeah,
Back in '79.
Back in '79. But, of course, viewers today will experience it on a DVD or streaming, and they will have to devote 3 full hours to watch it. So I think it might have been improved if it shed maybe 15 minutes or so. On the plus side, you get a stellar performance from James Mason. Also, the scenes with Ralphie at the window, terrifying even today. That scene with Jeffrey Lewis in the rocking chair still haunts me. Overall, though, I think Salem's Lot may have grown a little bit long in the tooth or fangs. So I will give the 1979 version of Salem's Lot 15 drops of blood.
15.
I think it's still in the recommended category, well within that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Just for the sheer fact of the staying power of it. I mean, oh my gosh. Like I said, I got goosebumps just thinking about him at the window. It's just like,
gosh. Yeah, same here.
So what do you think of the new one coming out?
Well, I've seen the trailer. I have seen a couple of reviews, and I am not sure this one has hit the mark based on what I'm seeing, so I may actually have to go and just watch it myself. It looks like it has a good cast. It looks like it's got a lot going on, some digital effects and whatnot, but I'm not sure. I just am not sure until I see it.
Yeah, I'm worried that it's going to be when they remade Fright Night,
Right.
It's just not the same.
Yeah, it is. I'm worried about that too, and because this is Stephen King's vampire novel. I know he wrote another one, Night Flyer, and something else, but this one is his landmark vampire novel, his second novel, and it's you want any adaptation to do him right, the story right.
Yeah. Well, and like I've said before in interviews and stuff, this was the movie for me. This was my first, true introduction to vampires, and it just hooked me. Yeah. It absolutely hooked me. This was it. So this was the 0.0 for Eva.
Same here. I mean, I'd seen Bela Lugosi. I'd seen, Christopher Lee. I thought both of them were great. But this is where the first time where I really saw vampires portrayed as monsters. Mm-hmm. And that was what was so scary about them.
All right. Ooh, God. Okay. So we get back to the podcast. It's so much fun.
Yes. Okay. Shake it off. Okay.
Shake it off. Get rid of these goosebumps now. I gotta go sleep after this. I'm gonna be dreaming. I'm like,
you're welcome, Eva.
I'm actually doing this from Cincinnati. I'm on the 8th floor, and I can just envision, opening up my curtain. Oh man, I can't even think about it. Jeez,
yeah.
All right. One final note. We are now entertaining sponsorship inquiries for Vamp Chat. So if you want to inform our rapidly growing audience about your business or upcoming events,
this is a great opportunity for those looking to reach folks who read about vampires, who watch films or TV shows about the undead, and who are more likely to attend events geared toward their fellow creatures of the night.
And we're having more and more of those. So to inquire about sponsoring Vamp Chat, email us at vampchatwithdanandeva@gmail.com or reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram.
And we look forward to introducing your business or event to our audience.
And that's our show. Be sure to listen to our final episode of this season 1, October 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
And we will start a brand new season on January 8th. Wait, did we just break a bit of news with that announcement?
Yeah, we did. We were very excited to interview more authors, dig up more of the folklore, and review more films and TV series for you.
Again, a new season of Vamp Chat starts January 8th. Big thanks to this evening's guest, Stephen Zimmer, author of many books, including a vampire novel called Prowling the Darkness.
And thanks to you for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also email us at vampchatwithdanandeva@gmail.com.
All right, children of the night, we wish you safe dreams.
Just keep an eye open for those creatures of the night. I know I will be tonight.
Pray for daylight. And if you can't sleep, we have vampire books to recommend. Be sure to devour Eva's novel, A Fury.
Or sink your teeth into Dan's novel, Fiona's Guardians.
And with